Have you ever noticed that sometimes your reaction feels much stronger than the moment itself? Perhaps someone says something small, and suddenly you feel hurt, defensive, or misunderstood. Or a situation appears in your life that feels strangely familiar, even though the people or circumstances are completely different. Moments like this can leave us wondering, why does it keep happening? Sometimes it feels as a certain experience following us through our lives. Not always in obvious ways, but through patterns that quietly repeat themselves over and over again. Hello, my name is Patricia and I'm from InnerSource Galicia. In our work, we often meet people who feel that certain situations or emotional reactions keep repeating in their lives, almost as if something from the past continues to appear in the present. Today, I would like to explore this a little bit more. We will look at how these patterns can show up in everyday life, how to recognize them, and how awareness can slowly begin to loosen the emotional charge that keeps them repeating. But how do we recognize this pattern? These patterns often show up in very ordinary situations. You may notice them when you find yourself explaining your intentions again and again, hoping that the other understood them. Or when you withdraw from a conversation because something in the moment feels uncomfortable in a way that seems older than the situation itself. Perhaps you notice that similar dynamics appears in different relationships, like feeling responsible for others, trying to avoid conflict, or feeling that you have to prove yourself. If you pause for a moment now, you might gently ask yourself, is there a reaction in my life that feels familiar in this way? Let's talk about the energetic nature of the patterns. One way to understand this is through the energetic side of our experiences. Every meaningful experience carries not only a memory, but also an emotional charge. When something happens that we cannot fully process in the moment, perhaps because we were too young, or overwhelmed, or simply trying to cope, the emotional energy connected to that experience does not completely dissolve. Instead, it can remain present in our system. Not always as a clear memory, often it stays as a subtle energetic imprint. You might notice this when a situation suddenly brings up emotions that seems longer than the moment, seems larger than the moment itself. But why does patterns repeat? Patterns repeat because that emotional energy has not yet fully moved through us, and life sometimes brings us into situations that resonate with it, not as a punishment, and not because we did something wrong, but because something in the system is still trying to complete what once remained unfinished. So we may encounter similar situations again and again. with different people, in different environments, and completely different stages of life. And yet the emotional tone feels familiar. If you reflect on your own life for a moment, you may even notice certain things that seem to return in different forms. So let's focus now on the moment of awareness. At a certain point, something begins to shift. Instead of only reacting to the situation, we begin to see the pattern itself. We notice that the reaction we feel might be older than the moment we are in, and that awareness creates something very important. It creates space between the situation and the reaction. And sometimes the small moment of space already changes everything. In that little space, something new becomes possible. Instead of reacting automatically, we can pause. Perhaps taking one breath before responding. Perhaps noticing what we feel instead of immediately acting on it. You might experiment with this the next time you notice a strong reaction appearing. Just for a moment and see what happens. Often, that small pause already begins to loosen the pattern. And when do the emotional energy begin to release? Patterns often continue to appear until the emotional charge connected to them can slowly soften and release. This does not mean we have to relive the past. Often, it simply means allowing ourselves to become aware of what we feel when the pattern appears. Meeting the reaction with curiosity instead of resistance. And over time, the emotional energy that once kept the pattern alive begins to move. And when that happens, something remarkable occurs. The pattern no longer needs to repeat itself, not because we forced to stop it, but because the emotional charge that sustained it has finally found space to dissolve, just by that little moment of pause. You might take a quiet moment today and simply notice, is there a reaction in my life that still carries an emotional charge from the past? Not to judge it, just to see it. Because awareness is often the first step towards transformation. The past does not always disappear, but when we become aware of the patterns it created, we slowly regain the freedom to respond from who we are today.